Strive and Thrive is a collection of discussions featuring guests from various fields, focused on guiding entrepreneurs in creating businesses that excel in every aspect: people, planet, and profit. Throughout the series, you can join us, Romesh and Mike, as we explore relevant topics with our guests which can help businesses thrive.
Romesh and I met while I was supporting a client transforming their business. When I needed finance director support and reached out to him and his team. Since then, we've become good friends who share a passion for business and entrepreneurship. If you like today's discussion, then you want to subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our latest episode with Fiona Scott. Fiona is a journalist with almost 40 years experience who has worked in television and now runs her own media consultancy. Fiona is also an author of 2 books, a podcaster and a regular commentator in the media about public relations. I've had the pleasure of knowing Fiona for a number of years, and I know she'll have some great stories to share. And in fact, I'm pretty sure she's going to be talking about the power and importance of stories as well. Fiona, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. Can you please start by taking our 1-minute challenge and telling us at a high level what you've achieved to date?
Hi everyone, and hi Mike, hi Romesh. Thank you for inviting me on today. What have I achieved? I have achieved creating a micro business after losing my job and having no business acumen, in fact, or desire whatsoever. But it has taken me a long time to do it. And now I look back, it's 18 years this year, and I just think, wow, how have I done that? To go from 1 month earning £200 and wondering how I was going to earn more to a £200,000 turnover micro consultancy. And I'm still learning every day. And that is the joy of the small business sector. It's full of interesting people. Every day is a school day, and long may it continue.
That is a lovely introduction, Fiona. Thank you very much. And you're playing nicely into the sweet spot of Romesh and I's real interest in small SME businesses and how they grow. You describe yourself when we talked beforehand as maybe an accidental entrepreneur founder or reluctant entrepreneur founder, which you nicely just articulated. What are some of the things you've learned? You've got a long-term business now. What have you learned on that journey?
I think I've learned mostly loads of things about myself. I think good entrepreneurs start to identify the things they're good at and the things they're not so good at. And so you come to a place of acceptance of yourself and where you need help. I think there are very few entrepreneurs that are, well, you cannot be an island. You need a team. You might not employ the team, but you need a team. You need to have people around you to be successful. You need to have an eye on your numbers, and I'm not a numbers person. Romesh knows this. I'm not a numbers person, but you have to know your numbers. And I learned that the very, very hard way. If you want me to get into that, I will. And so you need to know your numbers. You need to be both practical. And I love the start of this this recording, people, planet, and profit, because that is so true. That just about sums up. It's about doing something you love, for me anyway, doing something I love, doing something I'm good at, doing something that adds value for others, that I make a profit at, but I don't do it at the expense of my peace. Does that make sense? Have I gone off on a tangent there?
That's really good. And do you think, although accidental, as you described it in the first place, and you had to do it and you went for it and you had to learn about running a business, do you think it's given yourself a platform to do the work you really love to do, and has that been a surprising outcome from running your own business and the ability to continue your areas of interest?
Yeah. I muddled through it and made a ton of mistakes. But the truth was, I started off thinking I'll be a freelance journalist. That's what I'll do, because I came out of television. So lots of my colleagues were freelance, working in television, taking contract work. And I started off doing that with a PR consultancy in the background, thinking I might get 1 or 2 clients and that'll fill the downtimes when I'm not working on a contract. And I think I really did that for 3 or 4 years, and then got to a certain stage, and my then accountant said to me, accountants have played an important part in my life because they tend to be everything I'm not. And she said to me, okay, you're at a stage now. Do you want to be a successful freelancer, or do you want to go forward and be a businesswoman? And the answer came back without my brain engaging whatsoever. I just said, oh, I want to run a business. And I think that was the moment when I thought, actually, I am a freelance journalist. I am all of those things. And I think many entrepreneurs, but I am not just that. I do want to run a business. But I had no one in my family that ran a business. I had nothing. I had no measure other than other freelancers in the world of TV and the media who were already freelancers, if that makes sense. And there is a difference between being a freelancer and running a business. There really is.
And did you go about learning, as all of us do, through mistakes, etc.? But did you put a team together to help you understand how to run the business and fill the gaps that you had in your experience?
Yeah, but I did, but in a very piecemeal way, because when you start out in business or as a freelancer, you don't have enough money to invest in other people. And when you do have some money, giving some of that to someone else other than yourself is a really hard thing to do. We often underestimate that. You know that, don't you?
Yeah.
So what I did was the first thing I invested in was an accountant, because I realized I wasn't great with money and I couldn't see money as a tool. I can budget, but I can't see money as a tool for investment. I know that Romesh knows this because Romesh does see it as a tool, and because of all of his experience in business, but I wasn't like that. So that was the first person I worked with. And then I booked myself in for 4 places at once in my diary one day and realized I needed someone to manage my diary. I don't want you to think that I'm totally flaky and I can't be organized. I was just so busy. I'd forgotten that I needed to be, and that moment of booking myself, realizing I was meant to be in 4 places today instead of 1, meant that I thought, right, who do I prioritize? And I had to prioritize the first person I promised to, which was someone I was helping pro bono, and I lost money as a result of that. So then I'm thinking, that's crazy. I need not to be doing that. And then the third thing I did was someone to teach me about sales. And I cannot overstate how important that is. If you're not a salesperson and you hate the idea of sales, you need to learn how to do it and how to convert. And you certainly need to learn how to do it if you need to go above a level where you are now, whatever that looks like for you. So I actually invested in a year-long sales course, which I tell you cost a fortune, and felt sick at the thought of doing it. But it's one of the best things I did, because I now know how to sell myself appropriately to people. So let me give you an example of what that's like. Cold calling and going around and dropping leaflets about PR does not work in my world. Now, that works for other businesses. It doesn't work for me. People need to know, like, and trust me, because they're investing a lot. And they're also investing intimate things about their business with someone like me. So you don't make that. You have to trust someone to do that. So you aren't going to take a cold call, and you aren't going to pick up a leaflet and think, right, I'm going to use that PR consultant because that's the first person I've stumbled across. So I had to learn how to sell that's appropriate within my sector. And I'd be interested to know how you two handle sales, or business development, as we often call it now, but it is sales. Romesh, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I really identify with what you said there, because I went through a similar journey. I'm a finance director, right, by experience. I am not a salesman. I've mentioned it a few times before on this podcast, but actually, as you said, Fee, you've got to be able to sell. If you're a business owner, you have to be able to sell. So I think getting comfortable with putting yourself out there. I also did a kind of less involved sales training course, not as quite as a big year-long commitment as you did, but I had a a good experience with someone that you know, Barry Clark.
Mm.
Yeah, and actually, what I liked about that approach was just being myself, and really, really the trust, the relationships you build, as you said, people are buying into you as a person, aren't they, when it's our kind of service. So, in your case, PR consultancy, ongoing long-term relationships and support, building trust. You've got to be able to do that, and people are buying you, not the service, I think. And that's what you've got to project, and couple that with authenticity. People can tell when you're putting on an act, right? I mean, Mike, is that similar for you, or are there some differences?
Yeah, I'm not a natural salesperson either. I fall into the sort of categories of both yourself, Fiona, and Romesh. And it was something I think you described as an accidental entrepreneur, Fiona. I was always wanted to run my own business. I always tried, but I never quite made the bold move because I couldn't quite get my head around sales. Couldn't get my head around how am I going to offer something to somebody, and I'm not a confident leaflet distributor or phone call or marketeer or anything like that. And I was like, this is going to be really hard. And so I had to learn from others who are natural at it. You see some entrepreneurs who are sales-led entrepreneurs, and that really impresses me what they can do, and they can build really big momentum. They have other problems, right? But or other challenges. But for me, it's about learning from those people. And I think you nicely articulated it, Fiona, around finding the right people and the piecemeal help you need at the point you need it. At one point you need an accountant, the next time you need sales help. Same experience for me. At various points I've found the right sort of mentors or helpers to help me go on my journey. And I run two businesses at the moment, and they're both hugely different. One requires a more structured sales, one's more of a consultancy-led sales model. You've got to kind of work with people who are used to those kind of different models, and you've got to find your own journey, I think, is always the message we talk about on Strive and Thrive. And I think that's what you've really nicely articulated for your journey.
Yeah. And it's actually a common theme that we see, isn't it? Surround yourself by good people and tap into their support at the right time when you need it.
And I think that ultimately now, if I look at our sales process with my little freelance team, it is position yourself so that people buy from you when they're ready. So rather than me sell to them, it's when you're ready to buy, I'm here. And the other thing is that no is okay. No is okay. Think it over is pretty not okay, or it usually means no. Just recognize it and move on. I think those are the two most powerful learnings I've had around sales. And also just trust the fact that there are a lot of silent people watching you. They may not comment on your stuff, they might not engage, and then suddenly they pop up and you find, I had someone last year who'd been watching me for 4 years. I had no idea who this chap was. I've never met him. It was just on social media. Or I'll have someone in the real world. I'm based in Swindon in Wiltshire. Who'll say, we've met before. And I'm thinking, no, we haven't. We've never met before because I'm pretty good. But they're watching me in the real world. And I think trusting that process is so hard. And the other thing about sales is, knowing when to say no to somebody. It's okay to say you're not the right fit. Because if you don't listen to that little voice, I promise you down the line, things are going to go wrong.
Yeah, I think we had an episode recently where Peter Moles talked about in sales, no, think of a no as not yet. And I think that's a really nice narrative. And the reason I like that is because it's psychologically hard when someone says no to you. For whatever reason, you might really want the opportunity, you might need the opportunity, whatever it is, but trying to be confident enough to go, it's okay to propose something to someone and them say no, or it's okay to propose something to them and you decide it's not okay because it's the wrong time or whatever it is. But it doesn't mean that's never. It could still happen in the future, and you can still engage with those people and keep those relationships, because to your point, Fiona, they'll come back at some point.
Yeah, you both said some really important things there. Initially rejections I took very personally. And I found that quite hard, and to disassociate myself. And yeah, Peter Moll said it perfectly, as you say, Mike. Yeah, a no's a not yet, and you never know. So always stay in touch. But Fiona, your point is the right fit. And I think it's understanding that not everyone is going to be your perfect customer or client. And we are talking kind of on a consultancy basis here, but probably applies, in a wider context as well. And once you accept that, who you're going for, in terms of building relationships and trying to find them and trying to build a good connection.
And sometimes in my world, I think sometimes we don't talk about this. Sometimes someone goes and leaves you for a good reason, a positive reason. So a sort of area for me is if I've worked with an entrepreneur, and I can think of one I know really well in the world of IT, who I worked with for several years, and then he offered me a job in his business to do what I do full time. And I really seriously thought about it. But then I thought, no, I didn't build a business to work with one single client. That's part of the variety of what I do and I love. And it also keeps me pretty impartial, so I can look at things from the outside. That meant I then lost that client because he wanted to recruit someone full time. That's how much he valued the type of thing that I do. Now, what I did was I just said, I completely get it. For me, it's success. Will you give me a testimonial? And he did. But what happened was interesting because he employed a full-time marketing manager. Later, she got so busy doing all the other stuff, he came back anyway. And then he started to invest in other businesses where he wanted PR at an appropriate moment for those businesses. So sometimes saying it's fine for you to go, I get it. It's actually a measure of the success of PR that you're making different choices. So you can have a positive parting of the ways.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I always say to clients, let's grow to the point where maybe you need a full-time FD, in which case, we'll support you. But to your point, if you've done a great job supporting them to that point, they will be an ambassador for you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's
absolutely.
A couple of times now, Fiona, you've mentioned it, that you're now a business owner and you want to own a business, run a business, sorry. At what point did that occur on your journey? And I want to touch on the fact that I know you've written the book, The Hard Yards, about running a business and what that was like. Was that a kind of also a retrospective therapeutic review of what you have experienced on your journey for others to learn from? What was the point you suddenly went, I know how to do it, I am a business owner, and I'm now going to share that experience for other people?
Okay. It happened in two ways. The first one was when my then accountant challenged me, did I want to continue to be a successful freelancer, or did I want to? That was the first point. But the point where I actually believed it, I had a charity fundraising dinner for my 50th birthday. So that was 8 years in. And I remember being in that hotel and thinking to myself, will anyone actually turn up? 50 people paying like 50, 60 quid a head for charity. I am just a backwater journalist from Swindon. Will they turn up? And I was stood there really nervous thinking, oh my gosh, what if nobody comes? And I went down in the bar and it was packed. It was packed and I had flowers and chocolates. Love all that. And during that dinner, someone said to me, oh, you better say a few words, Fiona. I just thought I'd stand up and say, thanks ever so much. Here's Phil, who's running the charity. He's going to talk to you about the charity that we're raising money for tonight. But I found myself talking about the fact that I was 50 and 8 years ago, I lost my dream job. And I was totally bereft. I would have done that forever. Yet here I am 8 years later at age 50. And none of these people, apart from my husband, I knew prior to that. And here I am 8 years later, having built a small business. And all of these people were there based on me and knowing me. And it was the first time I said, I'm actually a little bit proud of myself for that. And we raised £1,000 for charity that night. And I think that was the moment when I thought, I'm a business person. I might not be in a scale-up business. I might not be a millionaire, but I have done it. And it was also at that point that I thought, I'm going to write a book about this, because there are going to be loads of people like me, loads of people who reluctantly, through redundancy or through life choices, find themselves having to seriously consider running their own business. And if my book helps one of them, it'll be worth it. And that's why I wrote the book.
Brilliant, Fiona. And tell us about some of your insights in that book. So can you give us a high level summary of what worked and maybe what didn't work?
Do you know, I almost think you've got to make the mistakes to truly learn and have success. So the first thing I would say is there isn't failure. It only becomes failure if you make a mistake and don't learn from it. And often that means looking at your own behavior. Now, occasionally it'll be someone else's bad behavior, and that's fine, but you always have to look at your role within that. The other thing is you have to work hard. I have never worked harder. I thought I worked hard in an employed role. I worked long hours. I traveled a lot. But I have never worked harder than running my own business. And I think part of that is because you're so emotionally involved in it. Everything is on you. And you have to understand that. And it isn't for everybody. And that's okay. And the other thing is, the one thing I had that I was really good at is journalists are people generally. They love people. They want to connect with people. They're curious about people. And they are natural networkers. And that, I think, was the biggest strength I had. I could connect people with each other. I could connect with people myself. What I had to learn was the point at which you say to someone, that costs. When to show them the till. When was that appropriate? I had to learn that. Oh my gosh, the first 2 years, the amount of work I did for free, and I fell into it by accident, really. And I do talk about this a lot now. And some people probably think I'm a bit strident about it, but particularly for women in business, I think, in my experience, women in business generally, and particularly if they don't come from a financial background, they give away a lot of their expertise for free. And you can do that all day long if you want to, but you won't earn any money. So you have to be willing to pick apart your personality and rebuild it in order to be a successful business person. And always be curious. Always think that someone you meet has something to teach you. And if you are the most successful person in the room and that strokes your ego, you like that, give your head a wobble, because you really need to be in a different room. I don't know if any of that resonates with you guys.
Yeah, the humble nature of the founders and entrepreneurs that we interview on this and the recommendations of that just come out all of the time. Recognize what you're good at, work out how to amplify that, work out the areas you're not so good at, and recognize that. And whether that's you adapt or you find someone to fill that void, that's a decision you make at the time, but that need to be humble and reflect on what you're doing and how you run your business. It's an emotional journey as much as it is a skills journey, is the kind of summary that a lot of the interviews we're doing are saying. And I think for me, I have that. Romesh coined the word roller coaster ride, and I'm giving him the credit for it. But that's what it's like, and to manage that's not a skill problem. That's an emotional journey management problem. And I think
it's
knowing yourself is the best success story here.
Yeah. I think that's a good summary, Mike. Actually, and I'd probably add, just to double down on what Fiona just said, like really recognize your value. And have the confidence to recognize your value, so that, if you don't believe in your value, your customer isn't going to either, right? So I think having that confidence, and that is a bit of a journey as well, and it is interesting. I think with my group of consultants, I have noticed that the women in the group of the FD consultant, they sometimes will charge less than the work they've done. and, I kind of talk to them about it and say, look, we want to be fair to the client. We've got to be fair to you as well, and I think that is important. And yeah, it's a psychological journey. It's adding skills, and it's but yeah, I liked, Fiona, the fact that you are humble enough, as Mike said, to be open to learning from others. And that's certainly something that I've loved about my entrepreneurship journey is the learnings and the fact that people want to help you. And if you can tap into that and learn from them, you're onto a winner, I think.
Can I ask you both a question? Because we're touching on setting up your own business and sales and things, and you touched on it there, Romesh, and Fiona did. What would your recommendations be on pro bono work when you're starting your new business, or even when you're a more mature business like yourself, Fiona? What are your two's opinion on doing pro bono work, and should you do it, and the implications of doing it?
Okay, I think you should, but you need strategy and purpose behind it. So, and the reason I say you should is that in early years, you need to prove yourself a bit, and you need testimonials and you need things like that. So in your early years, if you're going to do some work with someone pro bono, make sure there's something for you in it. It may not be money, but you must have some marketing assets or something like that. And that you must set some very clear parameters around it. So for me, in the early years, it might be, I'll do one press release for you, and we'll get the coverage and you give me a testimonial, but I'm not going to do a whole year's worth. As you get more established, doing pro bono work is very good if you're doing work for charity or something like that. So let's just say you can't afford to raise money for charity, so you want to offer a service. So in my business, every single year, I work for one charity pro bono for 1 year, every year.
Amazing.
So what does that look like in practice? What it means is Lauren, my stepdaughter who works with me in the business, Lauren, will look after a client for a year, putting out between 8 and 12 stories a year into the media to showcase their work and what they do. And they get that for free. But it's 1 year only, and I have a waiting list of charities that want to do that. They tend to be very local, but my rules are this: you provide the photography, and it must be appropriate. I do not chase you. We do a planning session. You stick to the plan, and then after that year, we move on. Now, there are two reasons for doing that. I believe in giving back to the community in which you're based, and also, it's part of PR. You can tell a story in the media that you're supporting that charity, and you can even put a price on it. If another charity wants to work with me, I also have a charitable rate. So they have to pay, but it will be a charitable rate. If I believe in the work of that charity and I understand the work of that charity, I would not do that for a national charity with big budgets. Just because they wanted it cheap. No, but for a charity where you can really move the dial in your own community, it might be a social enterprise in your own community, then I'm willing to do it, but I don't take any more than 3. And that's what, over the years, I've worked out works in my world. So it builds as part of your story strategy for the year. You see it as having value, and it will bring you a ton of benefits that you can't see yet, intangibles. That's almost like another discussion, but I encourage all of my clients to do it, and the majority of them will. Probably not in year 1 or 2, but usually by year 3, they're thinking, okay, I need to start giving back in some way and support others.
Really good. What about you, Romesh?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mike, and thanks, Fiona. It's great you're doing so much. So many meaningful things there. Yeah, when I started the business, I started literally just before COVID. That was so actually I did some pro bono work with a couple of businesses and helped them navigate what was obviously an incredibly tough time for businesses everywhere. And yeah, it was lovely to be able to help, actually, and it gave me some momentum. So it was good for me. But, I think, the owners of those businesses just really appreciated the support, and they've been really great supporters ever since, which is really nice. But no, I mean, the satisfaction for me was to get stuck in and help during a real time of crisis. And of course, you know, in finances during that time is really, really important, isn't it? So it was very relevant for those people. Now what we try and do is help with organizations by maybe running workshops or seminars to educate and inform, because that's part of our mission. The mission of the FD consultant is to support and inform entrepreneurs in the same way that Strive and Thrive is. And so to that end, we've run multiple workshops with a charity called Blueprint for All, where we are educating young entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. And my job there is to kind of try and make a very bland subject to people who are quite young, the importance of finance is exciting and relevant. And that's been fun and really rewarding. And I love the engagement from those people. And similarly with accelerator programs and workshops, with entrepreneurs of startup or scaling businesses, it's great to kind of give back and help, and hopefully give them a solid foundation and guidance at the beginning of their journey. Mike, what have you and your team done in regards to this? That's something that you're interested in, of course.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like both your answers, really, because when I started, someone said to me, never do pro bono work. You've got to get your first pound, and you get your first pound, and then you're off. And that wasn't my strategy. And I think for what you talked about, Fiona, in terms of making it strategic, making sure it's bounded, making sure you're thinking about what the wins are. And I think, Romesh, in the same way for you. So we do lots of support to entrepreneurs. And so we do lots of pro bono work to help entrepreneurs get their projects off the ground. That can be universities, it can be charities. At the moment, I'm helping someone who's looking at a governance-based application and a piece of software all the time, but it's very bounded, very controlled, but it's designed to give us the storytelling of the organization, to your point, Fiona, and it's also, to your point, Romesh, give that experience and open up your network and reputation. So it's really interesting in terms of driving that forward. And I think the one thing I wanted to ask you, which Romesh has touched on, Fiona, is storytelling. And that's a big part of where PR is going. How do you think organizations and companies, small SMEs and the companies you work for, can really use some of these examples to do PR and storytelling?
Well, the key thing in any business that wants to tell stories or work with the media is selling your product or service is of no interest to the media unless they're writing about that product or service. So that's the key thing. It's not advertising. So focus on people's stories. And sometimes entrepreneurs will think, well, that's really boring. I want to sell. You've got to get out of a sales mindset when you're dealing with the media. This is about sharing the stories of your people, sharing your expertise where appropriate. You can tell I've said this a lot, can't you? So with working for charity, I've just done a client story. I advise with clients who are a little bit more established to choose a charity of the year with their team. And I'm just going to talk through this example because I hope you can apply it to other things. So what you do is you come up with a short list of maybe 3 charities that speak to the team, and you get the team to vote if you've got a team, or you can vote yourself if you're on your own. And then you set a target for working with that charity that year. And that target has to be, if you want media coverage at some point during that year, it has to be at least £1,000. So I myself on my own raise about £3,000 a year for a project that I'm passionate about. So if I can do that on my own, a team could do 3, 5, 10,000. But then you have to plot out that you're going to do it and how you're going to do it. So story one might be, Romesh's company, the FD consultant, has adopted blah blah charity for the year with a pledge to raise £5,000. Story 1. That's it. And you might get a picture with someone from that charity. Story 2 might be, here we are at our fundraising event, webinar, fundraising day, sponsored walk, whatever it might be. And here we've raised 1,500 of that money. So that's story 2. Story 3 during the year might be, and here we are at another event where we've raised the money. And then story 4 would be, here we are donating the money to the charity. So when you work with a charity, and it has to come from a place of authenticity and passion first, that's at least 3 or 4 stories. And if you're doing, as my clients, I try to make them do 12 stories, 1 story a month out in the media. That's 4 stories. Okay. And there are 4 stories that show that you care about charity and community. You're not plugging your service, but clearly within any story, you're going to say what you do, but in a very non-salesy way. Other examples of stories for businesses would be sharing information about changes in the law. You've moved to a new office premises. You've employed an apprentice. You've won an award. You're shortlisted for an award. You know, these are the bread and butter stories that entrepreneurs miss because they don't think they're stories. They focus too heavily on the sales pitch. But the sales pitch is the story. And that's the thing. And also, if you're always saying the same sales pitch, it's boring. It's boring for you. It's boring for people to read. It's boring for people to listen to or to watch. And when you keep doing that, you'll know you're doing it if you're doing your own PR, because sooner or later, a local newspaper advertising rep is going to be ringing you to say, keep sending us stuff. If you want that to go out, you're going to have to pay. And that's the key thing. That should be showing you that what you're sending out is not appropriate.
There are 2 things I'm getting from that, really. It's kind of show, don't tell, demonstrate. And then it's real authenticity, isn't it? You know, do what you say you're doing. And then, people who that activity appeals to will be drawn to you, and you're not selling directly. And I think as long as you're doing it from a genuine place, and I think that is a really, really strong and important message.
Can I ask a cheeky question now? I've been dying to ask this for the whole of this conversation.
Okay.
You talked about charities, and you can almost naturally see you're driving it. Even if it was my business or Romesh's, you're driving it towards an opportunity for marketing or publicity. When you're working with an interesting company like Romesh's, where you've got accountants in a very dry subject, what are some? Because that's the I had to do it. That's the large scale of lots of businesses. Is how do you help those types of businesses, Fiona, really understand what the art of the possible is in terms of PR and journalism and opportunity?
Oh gosh, I always talk about the delusion that entrepreneurs have in this context. So they fall into 2 deluded categories. One is, my story is the best thing since sliced bread. I'm going to be on the national press. I run £1 million turnover business and I should be on Question Time. That's a delusion, okay? Your story isn't the best thing since sliced bread, but it has its place. We will have all met entrepreneurs like that. But equally deluded is the person that says, I'm an accountant. I do the really boring and dull stuff and no one's going to be interested in that. That is equally delusional, because we are all people. We are all multifaceted. And while we might make in our own head the assumption that what we do is boring, there are some people in business that provide a service that is absolutely necessary to the success of the business. Okay, or to dealing with difficulties in the business. So that would be the financial and the legal sector. Then there are some businesses like mine where we probably are not as essential all of the time. Or we are a value add to a business, or we're appropriate at a time a business wants to grow beyond where they are now. They've achieved a level of success and they want to do new things, and someone who does PR comes in. PR isn't right for everybody. at every stage of their journey. So it's really just understanding, if you are very much into ROI, numbers and figures, you think that what you do is boring, then what you're essentially saying is that you're boring. And do you go to a networking group in the real world and say, hello, my name's Fiona Scott, I'm really boring, and what I do is boring? No, we don't. We are people and we are interesting. And yeah, our day-to-day skills might be something that some people think's dull, but you know, it's not dull to other people who've got problems in that area, where you're solving a problem for them. And so you need to get out of your own head around this. And start to see you as others see you.
Yeah, thank you, Fee. And I think there's real power in describing the outcome of the activities that you do. Yeah, because to Mike's point, a business like mine, FD, senior finance. Okay, what does that mean? Talk about what that can do to transform your business and take it places. Give case studies, give examples of how you have made a significant impact. And that's a story, isn't it? And actually, that kind of leads me on, I think, to something I'd like to ask you about, Fiona, and that's the power of storytelling. Storytelling's been an important part of your life. I mean, it's been the thread that's run all the way through, really, hasn't it? Can you tell us about the importance of storytelling from a business perspective, a personal perspective, and why you have such passion for it?
Because actually, if you think about it, we've passed down knowledge and experience and talent through storytelling right back to the dawn of humanity. We just use it in a slightly different way now. It's how we pass on knowledge. It's how we learn. And that's because most of us in business, we buy emotionally. We will make our final decision emotionally and then justify it intellectually. So storytelling is very important because it allows us to talk about our business and ourselves in a variety of ways. It allows us to demonstrate who we work with, impacts that we've had. Some of those are very tangible impacts, i.e. turnover in business, growth of business, but it could be intangible impacts, working for charities. And just think about how we all consume stories. We watch TV, we watch movies, we read books, we look at social media. There are very few people that don't do any of those things. Listen to the radio in the car. We consume stories, multiple stories, every single day, and it's hugely powerful. And actually, as human beings, we're very good at picking up on the difference between a story and advertising. Okay, and the reason why it's going to be more essential now from a technical point of view is with the dawn of AI and AI searches that will replace, say, internet searches, and are already replacing them, given that something like ChatGPT has grown in 2 years to the level that the internet took 10 years to reach. Stories and other people talking about you will rank higher through AI search models than you on your website saying how great you are. So you have to do multiple storytelling in lots of different places. Now, there is nothing wrong with some business consultants just doing, how many times do you hear this? The best business comes from word of mouth. Yes, it does. But how many networking groups do you have to belong to? And how many hours in a day have you got to go to them all to create the size of business you want? So storytelling allows you to network online in the same way. It is natural to me, though. My problem is having too many stories and going off on tangents and stories and reining them in, which is why it took me so long to actually write a book, because I just thought I could tell a billion stories. Which one should I tell? How do I make them into a book that makes sense to people and isn't just going off in 100 different directions at once? So this may sound mad. I had to have a book mentor to help me to hone my story into something that was appropriate for the audience I wanted to reach. Otherwise, it would have been a hot mess, frankly.
Interesting. What are some of the biggest stories that have influenced you in the last 10, 15 years of your career and in your business, Fiona? Because the story you
Oh
told
gosh.
around the event, when you were at the event and you realized you were a proper business owner, that is a lovely example of you've articulated the benefits of a story in one simple story. Have you got others like that on your career in your running your own
Oh
business or with
gosh.
entrepreneurs you've worked?
So many. I worked with a property developer called Mandy St John Davy, who's based in South Wales and still a great friend today. And I always remember meeting her, and she's an introvert, so she's quite shy. So writing stories that showcase what she'd actually done and achieved was just gave her the ick. And that's really common. But she had a goal, and her goal was to become chair of Women in Property, which is a lobbying group for women in property and construction, very well known. And it took us 6 years to do it through tour storytelling with that particular goal. And that was a very proud moment for me. So that wasn't one story, that was many.
Lovely.
And those stories, even though she semi-retired a few years ago, those stories are still paying dividends for her now. So I was very proud of that. I've worked with 4 Dragons Den entrepreneurs. I'm working with them, seeing them on TV and how that works. And one of them I've worked with for 10 years. And I'm very proud of that. But it's not one story, it's multiple stories. And then I've also helped, to be honest, some things that are memorable is where I've helped entrepreneurs with stories that might have been very damaging if they'd gone into the public domain. So there's a crisis management element. I'm obviously, but I can tell you sometimes bad things happen in business and you have to manage them. And they might be, I have had police turn up at clients' premises because a member of staff was about to be arrested for domestic violence. That wasn't the business's fault, but the business was impacted by that. I have had a business where a member of staff drove company vehicle, drink driving, and crashed into a house. And I've had to deal with that. And I've even had, I'm not kidding you, the anti-terrorist police turn up and raid a client's premises. And I've had to manage that. I've also had to deal with people within businesses who have committed very serious criminal offences. So people won't think that PR people have to deal with that, but that does happen. I will, on average, I'll get 2 things a year with clients or people coming to me independently who want me to help them deal with that. And those stories will stay with me, even though they've never reached the public domain, because I've helped them manage that situation, hopefully, where they've survived it, where they've
Amazing.
got through it.
What are your, you probably can't go into the individual stories, but what are the kind of support that you're providing in that environment? How are you going about helping those organisations? Is the approach to dealing with the media or the approach to dealing with the response? It's
to deal with the media, but the media in the modern world, which often means social media as well.
Okay.
So I have to do some research into the background. How did we get to where we are? And then I have to work out where the fault lies. And then we have a strategy. It's a basic strategy. If something bad has happened that is not the fault of the business owner or the business, we acknowledge that it has happened appropriately and we act. Acknowledge, act. If it is the fault of the business, then it's admit, acknowledge, act. That sounds basic. So generally what that means is I speak to all the senior people. We come up with a form of words if it's going to be made public in various scenarios, particularly if there's going to be a court case down the line. And those form of words are used routinely across websites, social media, and responses to the media if they find out about it. And also I've worked with local authorities on disaster recovery plans. So I'll give you an example. I'm in Wiltshire. We had the Salisbury poisonings. You mentioned Salisbury before, Mike. We had the Salisbury poisonings. Do any of you think that the media would be a big problem at a story, like when a story breaks like that? Yeah, they're going to be huge. They're going to be huge, and they're going to turn up. The disaster recovery plans for big organisations and for local authorities will generally have one paragraph on handling the media. That's complete nonsense. Complete nonsense if you are a local authority and you know you might be at risk of a terrorist attack or a very big incident. Grenfell would be another example. The media are going to be on you, and they are going to be on you for days, weeks, months, years, and you have to have a strategy to handle that, because if you don't have a strategy, the media are going to be there anyway, and you will have no control over the narrative. And you ignoring them is not going to work, and you may come across as an organisation which doesn't care, which will damage you horribly. So a lot of it is anticipation, preparation, and then acting with kindness and caring in those, whatever those circumstances are. The biggest risks for most small businesses comes from staff and from social media. They're the two biggest risk areas.
That's,
is there anything you recommend to SMEs in terms of what they could do, the smaller size businesses, the 10 to 20 size companies who probably can't have necessarily a robust process in place? What would your recommendations be if there was an incident like that, and how they should react?
Instantly you start to feel that something is going south and might start to go beyond your control or might reach the public domain. It's the best investment is to get advice from someone like me about what to do and how to handle it. Now, that can be they come up with a strategy and you deliver it, or it can be they come alongside you and they help you manage it, and that will be down to budget. But you will pay a lot more for that than you will for sort of regular day-to-day PR, because often, so the sooner you act, the better it will be for you and the cheaper it will be for you, because if it's, say, an industrial tribunal or a court case, you are talking months away before that is happening. And they can come alongside you for that period of time. You will pay big money if you wait until the crisis happens and then you are in it. Because someone like me, I'd have to change my whole diary to help you. And I'm going to charge you for that, because I am moving lots of my clients aside in order to help you on that day.
Sounds like there are scenarios there where there might be an ethical tightrope to walk, I imagine. Some very delicate situations. And so what I'm getting from this is that, you know, PR's there for the good times when you want to kind of promote and story tell in a positive way, but it's also there to help you in difficult scenarios as well. And how do ethics impact your work?
A lot, actually, a lot. There's ethics. They're the ethics around my sector generally. The sector of PR has a lot of smoke and mirrors, and Romesh will know BS, and I don't operate like that. What you see is what you get, and I'm going to tell you the truth. But in terms of clients, if you are in a crisis management situation and it's coming, and you want someone like me to come along and fudge the issue or try and hide it or shy away from it and not confront it, forget it. I'm not doing that. And no good PR company will. You have to acknowledge the crisis and your role within it. That is the only way you're going to get through it. There are a few red lines, though. If you have committed a criminal act that, for me anyway, that is around abuse of other people, violence towards other people, particularly children, then I am not going to represent you. That is a red line I will not cross. I just won't. I cannot protect you from that, and nor would I want to. You have to face the full force of the law if you are guilty, and I will not get involved in that. And I have had that scenario.
Wow.
It must be very some very tricky situations there to deal with, Fiona. Fiona, thank you so much. We're going to kind of start wrapping up now. So my final question to you is, so what's next? What's next for you?
Okay, what's next for me? I've actually invested in 2 smaller companies completely unexpectedly for 2026. So I'm working with 2 smaller companies. One is a sort of retreat-based company. I identified that I work with some really interesting people, really quirky, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice to do some retreats and things like that with these people in a luxury setting where people can enjoy their expertise, but also enjoy good food, good company, because I'm pretty good at organising events. So I've invested in that. And then I've got another one I can't talk about, very different. So that's new. That's new, a new area. And the other thing is I'll be starting to write my 3rd book very soon. Look out for that in 2027 because it takes a while to do. That's going to be very different. That's going to be more of a sort of a being 60 book on what it's like to be 60 as a woman in the sort of 2020s, and just being more of the same, working with interesting people and people I like. That's what gets me up in the morning. So more of the same, please.
Amazing.
Brilliant. Fiona, I'm loving that you've got this continued appetite to do more, learn more, and just get stuck into some pretty diverse and exciting projects. That's excellent. I've really enjoyed your articulation of the power of storytelling, how business owners can lean into themselves and be authentic, and how you can help and how PR helps with that. And some quite powerful, really interesting stories as well. So thank you very much, Mike. Do you have anything to
add? Not hugely. I think you've nicely covered it. But the one thing I wanted to say is you beautifully articulate, Fiona, why people should give running a business a go in their 40s. It's really okay to give it a go, and it's hard. And be ready for it. And I think your experience and those of other people we've spoken to have talked about the journey. But if you get it right, the rewarding experience you can have in the latter part of your career can be absolutely fascinating. And I think all of your stories have beautifully touched on that. And I think that should be an inspiration for people who are thinking about setting up their own business, that they can do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go for it. Give it a try. The worst that can happen is that you find out running a business isn't for you, and that's a learning in and of itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good way to round things off. Fiona, this has been an excellent discussion. I've really enjoyed your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone very much for listening or watching. And we hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Fiona's provided us with some real food for thought. Strive and Thrive is a podcast for entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders. We're really excited about our growing following. Please like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. See you next time. Thank you for listening to Strive and Thrive.